Hold on. Mick, you know very well the other charges, which he'll never see a courtroom for, were much more serious. You know this. Even Bill Barr said he could be prosecuted for what he did with national security documents in Florida. But let me ask you a broader question, since we're not going to agree on this. Right. We are living in a country, you and I wonder whether we'll agree here, in which masked ICE agents with no badges, no ID numbers, no uniforms.
If you think you've already seen every possible defense of Donald Trump, think again. Because what you're about to watch is one of those exchanges that completely changes the tone of the conversation. This isn't just another political debate. It's a moment where past statements come back to collide with present-day arguments, and the result is incredibly difficult to ignore. Before we dive into the full story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. In this video, we're going to watch journalist Mehdi Hasan go head-to-head with Donald Trump's former chief of staff in a debate that quickly turns into a relentless fact-checking session. Instead of relying on opinions or speculation, Hasan repeatedly uses the former chief of staff's own previous comments against him, forcing him to explain why his position appears to have changed so dramatically. That's what makes this exchange so fascinating. It's not simply a clash between two people with different political views. It's about accountability. It's about whether public figures should be held to the things they've already said when the facts become inconvenient. And as you'll see, that creates some extremely uncomfortable moments. Throughout this discussion, you'll hear questions that become harder and harder to answer, especially when earlier statements are placed right alongside today's defenses. It's one of those interviews where every response seems to raise an even bigger question than the one before it. So let's watch the full exchange together, and once it's finished, I'll break down the biggest moments, explain what stood out to me, and share why I think this debate says something much bigger about the current state of American politics.
We'll come back to that.
Is he a perfect guy? No.
But you said you wouldn't vote for him again because of the insurrection.
Yeah, well, I didn't vote for him in the Republican primary, and a lot of folks did.
But you chose to put a man back in the Oval Office who you said, let me just quote you. Yeah. You said that he lit the fuse for the insurrection and attempted coup in 2021. You said we needed a president that day. We didn't have one.
Yeah, and listen, I think Bill Barr said something very similar. Bill actually testified against him at the January 6th committee and said, look, general elections are binary choices in my country. They really are. We don't have a third party. It's this or that. Yeah. And you have to say, okay, do I take this person with all of their warts and all their difficulties or this person?
I mean, an insurrection against the U.S. government is not a wart. It should be disqualifying, should it not?
I quit over it. I quit over it for a different reason.
You also said, I do not think you can be a reasonable person and say that Donald Trump should be president again.
Yeah,
so you're not a reasonable person.
Look, American politics is a nasty business.
Are you saying basically you're happy to shift your views because that's how politics works? Or are you saying you get the man wrong? Because you also, I just got to remind people here before we move on, just before the 2020 election, you wrote in a Wall Street Journal op-ed that, quote, if he loses, Trump will concede gracefully. He'll fight hard to make sure the results are fair, and in the end, he'll accept the result, whatever it is. How did that work out?
That's the easiest question I'll get tonight, because people misunderstand this. That was not a prediction. That was advice.
It was a prediction.
It absolutely was not, and here's why. I know how Donald Trump works. By this time, after the election, I had been shut out and wasn't able to talk to the folks on the team. I believe that the RNC was lying to people like myself who were trying to encourage a discussion about the election and so forth. People stopped taking my phone calls, and I knew how Donald Trump takes information. And one of the things he reads religiously is the op-ed pages of the Wall Street Journal. I wrote that piece for an audience of one.
So you didn't believe he was going to hand over power? You didn't just write an op-ed. You went on CNBC and said, I recommend that he accept a peaceful transition of power, which I think he would do absolutely. That sounds like a prediction, which was wrong.
I was, again, advising the gentleman, and he did not take my advice.
He hasn't taken your advice on a lot of major issues. I think you were one of those people, including his vice president, his attorney general, who said, don't pardon the violent criminals from January the 6th.
And I thought that was
He came in and pardoned nearly 1,600 people, many of whom attacked police officers, many of whom were prosecuted for having deadly weapons, many of whom had other convictions or pending charges for manslaughter, drug trafficking, rape, sexual assault of minors. Trump pardoned them all against the advice of his own people. What kind of person does that?
I thought it was a bad decision. I don't know why he did it. If you're not in the room with him when he's making the decisions, it's hard to understand exactly why he's doing it. By the way, his vice president said the same thing. Right? A week beforehand.
So he threw them all under the bus and just did this thing.
And he should have pardoned
and then you all just fell in line. The party always falls in line, no matter what he does.
He is the leader of the party. There's no question about that.
So just blind support from the Republicans.
Blind support.
I mean, this is a pretty big issue.
You can criticize, you can disagree, and then still support.
Well, nobody resigned over this. I mean, you're not in the administration, but none of these people resigned. It's a pretty big deal, right? To pardon insurrectionists who assaulted police officers.
I don't think it's the worst decision he's made. I think the worst decision he made was to take security away from various members of his first administration, Mike Pompeo, John Bolton. And I don't like John Bolton very much, but I thought there have been some
It's a horrible thing to do. He's a vindictive man. You say he's forgiving. He forgives the insurrectionists, but goes after his critics.
I think he's done a fine job as president. There's a lot of decisions.
But hold on, how can he have done a fine job as president?
Right now.
Well, he did. January 20th was his presidency. He began his presidency by pardoning insurrectionists. How do you just ignore that is what I'm wondering.
You don't ignore it.
You literally are. You're saying he's done a fine job. By definition, you're ignoring.
You have to take all of the... I don't think anybody who's president does 100% of the stuff that anybody wants, other than the president.
But there have to be some red lines. There are no red lines for you,
have
Donald
to take a look at the totality of the circumstances, don't you? I mean, aren't there politicians you like that you haven't agreed with 100% of the time?
Yes, I think for a lot of people, for example, voting for Joe Biden on the Democratic side, he supported what happened in Gaza. That was a red line. But for Republicans with Trump, there never seems to be a red line. Whatever he does, all is forgiven. You have called Trump's critics deranged for saying Trump would behave in an authoritarian, even fascistic way, that he would use the government in his second term to go after his critics. And yet, since he's taken office, Trump has cracked down on the press. He's ignored multiple court rulings. He's deported American citizens. He's threatened a Democratic New York Muslim mayoral candidate with deportation. He's arrested a Democratic mayor and a liberal judge. He's indicted a Democratic congresswoman. Unlike your predictions about Trump, the predictions of his critics have been vindicated.
Let's pick one.
I mean, they've been vindicated.
Let's just pick one.
Go.
Let's pick the indicting the Democrat congresswoman. Just because you're in Congress doesn't mean you get a get-out-of-jail-free card for whatever you do. They indicted her for attacking or assaulting a federal officer. Just because you're in Congress doesn't mean you can get away with that kind of stuff.
He didn't just indict her. Alina Habba, his ridiculous U.S. attorney in New Jersey, also arrested Ras Baraka, the mayor of Newark. He then had to be released, and a judge said that was a ridiculously hasty arrest. You are targeting political opponents.
Adam Schiff is a Democrat senator, used to be in the House, was a leading critic of Trump. Trump tweeted something today about, oh my goodness, it looks like Adam Schiff may have committed mortgage fraud over the course of the last couple of years. The point is, it's mortgage fraud, or at least it's an allegation of mortgage fraud. And my point is this, is it? It's just because you're a senator and a Democrat senator and an opponent of Donald Trump, does that mean that you're sort of protected against any sort of...
No, of course not.
Okay.
The totality.
The totality.
So for example,
we can do that with everything on the list.
Okay, the New York mayoral candidate, Zoran Mamdani. He says he may be here illegally. We may have to look at deporting him. That's insane.
Is he?
No, he's an American citizen.
How did he get here?
So we're going to question every American citizen now? You think that's normal? I'm an American citizen. You're going to question my citizenship as well. If I say
are you above the law? I don't understand. What's the equal
hold on. I just want to clarify where we stand here. You're saying it's okay for Donald Trump to cast aspersions on every American citizen who he doesn't like and suggest that they're illegally here.
Is casting aspersions fascism?
You don't think threatening a mayoral candidate...
How did he threaten him?
He said, we're going to have to look at that, whether he's here illegally.
Is that a threat, or is that just...
Hold on.
So you
think that's normal?
Where was this defense, Mehdi? Where was this defense when Donald Trump was charged criminally for paying back a loan early at his business?
That's your description. That's your description.
My description is
of what multiple grand juries and prosecutors disagree with you on.
Is no more one-sided than your list.
But what's interesting is during that period, we were told that the Democrats were weaponizing government against Trump. And I'm saying to you, that was projection. That is exactly what Trump is doing now. He is tasking the government to go after his opponents. That is what I'm saying.
I had Democrat friends of mine reach out to me and say, the thing about charging Trump criminally for financial stuff in his business, that stuff worried them the most because it was setting a precedent that they were worried would come back and be used against them, which is exactly what appears to be happening with Mr. Schiff.
So you're admitting it's revenge?
What is the difference between revenge and applying the same standard to others that have been applied to you?
It's not the same standard because Donald Trump wrapped up all the other trials against him. We'll never see the trial for January the 6th, which even you objected to.
You charge a man...
Multiple trials were shut down.
Put somebody in jail for saying something wrong on a loan application. In jail. By the way, no one's ever gone to jail in my country.
Hold on. I mean, you know very well the other charges, which he'll never see a courtroom for, were much more serious. You know this. Even Bill Barr said he could be prosecuted for what he did with national security documents in Florida. But let me ask you a broader question, since we're not going to agree on this.
Right.
We are living in a country, you and I wonder whether we'll agree here, in which masked ICE agents, with no badges, no ID numbers, no uniforms...
Now, I'll cover the rest of this debate in another video because there's still plenty to unpack. But this exchange alone really stood out to me. The biggest question I kept asking myself throughout the entire interview was this: What is it that keeps so many former Trump officials coming back to defend him after publicly criticizing him in the past? Take Mick Mulvaney as an example. After the events surrounding January 6th, he was one of the people who openly distanced himself from Donald Trump. He made it clear that what happened crossed a line for him. Yet fast forward to today, and here he is, sitting on stage defending many of the same actions he once condemned. That's the part I genuinely struggle to understand. What made this interview so compelling was that Mehdi Hasan didn't have to rely on opinion or exaggeration. He simply pulled out Mulvaney's own previous statements and asked him to explain the difference between what he said then and what he's saying now. Time after time, those questions became more difficult to answer, and you could see the conversation becoming increasingly uncomfortable. From my perspective, that's why this debate was so effective. When someone has to spend an entire interview explaining away their own past comments, it naturally raises questions about consistency and credibility. Rather than directly addressing those earlier statements, it often felt like the conversation kept shifting to new justifications instead. That's also why you could hear the audience reacting throughout the discussion. They weren't responding to flashy one-liners. They were reacting to the obvious tension created whenever old statements were put side by side with current defenses. It made for some genuinely awkward moments. But that's my take. I want to hear yours. Do you think Mehdi Hasan successfully used Mick Mulvaney's own words to expose contradictions in his defense of Donald Trump? Or do you think Mulvaney made a convincing case? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with anyone who enjoys political discussions. We're getting incredibly close to 50,000 subscribers, and every share helps us get there. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.